they developed. And this was DARPA's idea to have robots do surgery on humans. And when somebody mad scientists suggested, somebody said, you are crazy. I mean, there are so many variables when you're doing surgery. There's bleeding, there are nerves, blood vessels. How is a robot going to do that? But sure enough, people who have vision, who think of the future, they are the ones who have ideas. So this robot was developed. It's called Da Vinci surgery, after the great artist and scientist of the 16th century, Da Vinci. I think 16th or 17th century he lived in. This does all kinds of surgery, from heart surgery to urology to general surgery to GYN surgery. It does everything. The reason you don't need to be afraid about it or be scared is because, technically speaking, it's really the surgeon who is sitting on a computer is doing the surgery. What robot is doing is whatever I do with my hands, I grab the blood vessel, it does exactly the same. The holes that are made in your belly, they are so tiny. If you want to know how tiny those holes are and the robot's hands, fingers, how tiny they are, if you watch that DVD, there's DVD, by the way, you can watch. It's only 3 minutes. There's a picture in that DVD. It shows you the palm of your hand and the probe is sitting on it. So compare it to the size of your finger, of your finger. So that's the purpose of putting a probe on it, so you can see how big. It's really tiny compared to your finger. So it can, at a time, put 5 fingers or hands in there. So the robot is the surgeon, also the assistant surgeon. It has 5 hands in there. In a 3D setup, the surgeon puts his head in there in the computer. Everything is seen in 3D live. It comes live in front of you. And it's magnified 10 to 12 times. So the surgeon is basically doing this to the scissors, it's rotating, it's cutting, whatever it does with those sticks, the robot does exactly the same thing. Why is it safer? Because when a live surgeon does a surgery, when there are tiny little nerves and blood vessels, they are hard to see. And lo and behold, you're going to cut them, there is going to be some bleeding. But robot, you are now doing surgery at 12 times the magnification, so the size of the blood vessel is going to look like 12 times bigger. So it's easy to see now, easy to grab individual parts around the cervix, around the uterus, around the tubes, so you are very precise. That's why patient the next day will feel like they're walking around, they go shopping, because there is very little wound. All the unnecessary wound that happens as a result of live surgeon doing it, that is avoided, because you are very precise, very precision. So you get to that little tiny vessel that you need to cut. You don't cut 6 of them, 6 vessels, and then cauterize the rest of them that are bleeding. You cut only the one that you need to. So robots, computers give that precision and accuracy, so the wound is relatively very small, and there you heal very, very fast. This is technology of the future. If you realize, if Obama and the future administrations don't change anything, they are planning to have a colony on the moon and eventually on the Mars. So let's say there are 20, 30 people living there doing research, and one has a stroke, or the eye is shot, goes blind. You are in big trouble. There's no surgeon over there, there's no hospital. There's barely any oxygen. You breathe, stay indoors under oxygen pressure. So this is the kind of surgeries in the future. You have a problem over there, the surgeon is here, the robot is over there. Just take the robot, you dock it around the patient, and you start doing surgery here. The robot will do exactly, it's the same thing as though I am doing the surgery. So the brain behind the surgery is still the human. So this will get more and more sophisticated as time goes by. Robots and artificial intelligence is going to become more and more sophisticated in the future. This is already happening. I hate to tell you this is like a commercial. Our group is there's only 1, 2 surgeons in Kern County who are trained to do the advanced robotic surgery. There's no one else trained to do it yet. So if you're anybody ever interested, so you have to do your own research to find out what's available, what the options are, and pick the right thing that's right for you. I'm not suggesting the vaginal hysterectomy is not the right thing. In a lot of cases, that can be pretty benign. It can be done in 20 minutes. You have a small uterus. And so there are some patients where it will be appropriate to do other kind of procedures. So this is, we covered the bleeding problems. Try to fix in the office. It doesn't work. You go on to hysterectomy. I want to stay within the time frame because we will leave enough time for any questions. Actually, I don't know why time is flying. I've barely covered any information. It's almost, so I'll try to summarize. For bladder leak problems, if it's urgency problem, if it's overactive bladder, you need a medication. Most people will respond to medication. Those who don't will need to have a pacemaker, which is also available only at universities. I'm certified in that, but I have not done any case yet. Nobody has done a case of pacemaker in Kern County yet. I got certified to do that only like 6 months ago, but I haven't done a case yet. If you have stress incontinence, if you were to stop that leak problem that you have with cough or sneeze or jumping a trampoline, it literally is a 10-minute procedure. And when you wake up out of the OR, you can go home. Success rates are 99%. You will not leak again. That's how far we have come. Are there surgeons who continue to do the old-fashioned surgeries called Birch procedure, where they cut you here, they dig the tissue behind the suprapubic bone, and it's very dangerous. There are plexes of blood vessels there, hard to see. They frequently get cut. You bleed so profusely. The suction cannot catch up where the bleeding is. You have to be able to suction fast enough to see where the bleeder is. You can put a tie on it. Some patients end up with serious complications. I really see no reason why anybody should be doing that Birch procedure today, because these newer procedures are available. Surgeons need to make the effort to go and learn it. It's not hard to learn, so start doing it. After new technologies become available, it's not unusual for them to become available 5, 7, 8 years after they get introduced, because the new generation of residents who are trained in newer technology, they will do it. The old-fashioned guys, they're not going to change their ways. So that's why it's good to look around, research, do your own homework. There's a lot of variation out there. What goes on in the healthcare industry, I can't tell you. It's very, very shocking. The details are very shocking. So always participate in your own health. Now, it turns out that the pelvic prolapse used to be a huge problem. Until just 5, 7 years ago, the kind of surgeries that were done for pelvic prolapse for the last 50 years, half a century, none of them were satisfactory, because it lasts for a year, then it falls back out. I'm sure you heard someone that oh, I had this bladder tuck up, now it's back out again. It's only in the last few years that certain techniques have been developed that are really enduring and lasting. Most of these techniques were developed in Europe, and they used it for 5, 6, 7 years. And finally, those companies put up an application with the FDA. FDA took like 7 years to approve. Finally, most of them got approved in 2007, and now they are available. Very simple procedures. Risk is very low. The rate of complication is nearly almost 0.5% now, as opposed to 5, 7, 8% complication rates with the old-fashioned procedures. And the way it is done nowadays is usually polyethylene mesh. There are different companies that make different kind of meshes. One is Gynecare, another company is Boston Scientific, another company is American Medical Systems. They make their own meshes. They have their own designs. And the purpose of these meshes is to use that like artificial material that will work like hard ligaments and will hold up your tissue wherever you tuck it up. It makes sense that anybody who has a leak problem also have a prolapse of the bladder. If you are going to sleep, going to go under anesthesia, you can choose to just stop the leak problem, but it's kind of silly not to have your bladder uplifted at the same time, because you are taking the risk of anesthesia anyways. It takes another 20, 25, 30 minutes to finish the whole thing, and it rejuvenates your vagina and restore it back to the way it used to be way back before you had children. It's not going to become exactly that of a 16-year-old, but it becomes, you can make it pretty much the way it was before you had any children. Just so that you know, if you look at the names of these procedures, the names tell you what they do. One of them is called ProLift. So you're going to lift. Another procedure is called Elevate. That it suggests to you what it does. There's another procedure called Pinnacle. All these procedures have pros and cons, and they have to be chosen carefully depending on the patient's condition. The Pinnacle mesh is very thick. It should be used for those who have a huge, big prolapse. Like if you have a prolapse where things are dangling down between your thighs, you need a very sturdy mesh that will hold it up. So Pinnacle is a good idea. Most patients are candidates for ProLift or Elevate, where the mesh is not that thick, because you don't want to put thick mesh unnecessarily, because it can cause pain and erosion. The erosion rate is higher. The thicker the mesh, it will erode. They have done lots of studies on polyethylene. This material, almost nobody had a reaction or rejection to it. It's foreign material. And the incisions made, they are relatively small, and you thread the mesh through those small incisions and hook up to the ligaments, and it holds the falling organs permanently back where they belong, at the level where they should be. The leak problem alone takes a very minor procedure. It's usually a thin, tiny little mesh. Think of it like a little hammock or a sling that sits under the bladder and hold it up like a baby. Because remember, the bladder will go back and forth into your abdomen, fall back into the vagina. The idea is it stays in the abdomen. It doesn't fall. So when you cough, it falls down. That's when its pressure changes and you leak. And you want to prevent that. So this sling will hold on to the urethra. Urethra, that's where the pressure change. Hold on to urethra. It doesn't allow, when you cough, it doesn't allow it to fall back into the vaginal area. So that prevents the leak. That's how it works. Now, the so-called stress urinary incontinence can be due to various reasons. You can have stress incontinence if your sphincter doesn't work. What is sphincter? Sphincter, by definition, is a circular muscle which expands, open, and close the pupil of your eye. If you go in the light, it becomes a pinpoint. You go in the dark, it gets bigger. That's a sphincter. Another good example of sphincter, for you understand right away what sphincter means, the anal muscle. When you're doing number 2, it becomes bigger and then it closes after you are done with your business. So sphincter by definition is a circular muscle, and almost all orifices in the body have sphincters. Why? Because you don't want to give access to all your orifices to the external environment. That will be dangerous to bacteria, virus infections. So the sphincters protect the inside of your body from the outside environment.